Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. So as Dr. Shelley said, we would like for this moment to be as intimate as possible. Nedelka and I will ask some questions of, is Mr. Lawrence, is that okay?
Oh, please call me Donald or D.
Yeah. D, okay.
Yeah, either one, yeah.
All right, we'll ask some questions. We'll open it up to all of you, so please be prepared to ask some questions, and we'll pass around a mic so that those who will be listening to this afterwards, because it is being recorded, can also hear your questions as well.
Okay.
Right? So yeah. I'm going to go ahead and take it away with the first question.
Sure.
The first question that I have for you is, how did your upbringing cultivate an environment that would contribute to your success today?
You know what? My upbringing was unique. I talked about it yesterday in your library when they interviewed me, and I was telling them that I grew up around none of this. I grew up around music and church, but it wasn't culture. I didn't grow up with my father or my mom. I grew up with my mom's sister, my aunt. So at 6 weeks old, my aunt got me, and then she had her best friend, which is my godmother. So when she would work, she would leave me with her. So I was bouncing around like that. And they all went to the same church. And at the church is where I started picking up the music. But I would do things that wasn't part of that environment. And I always feel like music is based on where you lived. I always say that you can tell people's music based on where they lived, but I would do things that wasn't where I lived. So my aunt used to say, "Child, where you come from?" I don't know where you come from with that. So I would say, based on the question that you asked me, it did cultivate me in certain ways. I don't know if it cultivated all the creativity that I did. I watched TV a lot. I kind of grew up probably like an only child, and we tend to build our own worlds and live in them all the time. So I think that cultivated me more than the real world where I was living. But I will say that church had a big impact on it. It was this very small Pentecostal church in Gastonia, North Carolina. My cousin, she just had a really good taste in music, I thought. She picked the most unique music for the adult choir. And when I was probably really young, maybe, I would go to her house and look through her albums. They had those then, not the ones that y'all have now, but the real ones. And I loved going through them and picking the most unique songs and listening to them. So I always call myself a creative that's from the left side of the page. I'm not down the center. I'm kind of over here. And it's a lot of those, not a whole lot, but some of us are just like over here. So I will say, when it comes to how my environment helped me, I think it helped me find my voice. I will say that it helped shape my music palette in some areas, not all the areas of who I am. My aunt, being that I didn't grow up with my dad or my mom, she was really hard on me to be independent because I didn't have a father. So she made me work. And I told everybody, I said, when I was in college, she helped me. But that last day, that was it. She never gave me another dime, So she really wanted me to be able to take care of myself. So I'm extremely independent now. Like even though I'm an artist and I have teams of people do stuff, sometimes I just pick up the phone. I can move 40 people just like Marsha can. I can get on the phone and book the travel, the ground, the hotel. I can do it I can wake up and do it. I just learned how to do it all. So everybody's jobs around me, I kind of train them, but I know how to do it equally as well. And I know how to catch it when they mess up. So I think my aunts making me very independent helped a lot. I think my cousin, her music palette shaped kind of why sometimes my content is unique and it's not typically what people would say. My high school got me into drama, and it woke up even more of the musical theater side of me. But there were some things that was there that I've learned later. Because again, I didn't know my dad's family. I'm just learning them like in the last 10 years. I didn't know them. That's where the music was. Because then I find out I had a cousin who graduated from Manhattan School of Music, most valuable base. I have my cousin Glenn lives in DC. He has his PhD in theory. So a lot of that stuff that I didn't grow up around, I think it's just genetic. It's just in the blood, So it's a lot of them doing quite fascinating things on my dad's side. And I didn't grow up with them. I really literally just met a lot of them in the last 10 years.
You have said so much, and you said so much yesterday, and some of what I'm thinking about is pulling from what you said yesterday. So I'm thinking on a personal level, overcoming, hearing about your origin story. And then I'm remembering you talking yesterday about mediocrity and excellence, which is a specific conversation I'm interested in. But the question that I want to lean in right now is the thing that happens when you're a child and you spend a lot of time by yourself and your imagination is at play, which is one of the things that you spoke about yesterday. I would like you to talk more about imagination as a creative. Please.
Wow. Okay. Well, imagination, you imagine things. You know what? I love talking to y'all because y'all are really smart. And I love to be in a room with people who think like this because it's rare that I'm around people that I could just go way over there on their way out there. You know, there's a thing in us, and since we can talk kind of spiritual as well, you don't imagine, you imagine it in. If you can find a place inside of you where that you can see it and you imagine it enough, what you do is you imagine it in. Most people think we live from the outside in, but we live from the inside out. And probably the reason why the most creative people have the most unique work is because they live on the inside all the time. I always tell people, you know, I really live inside all the time, and then when y'all talk to me, I come out. But most of the time, I'm in here. And in high school, I just think I would be gone most of the time until somebody say, hey, what's the question right then? I come out, you know? So I think that if you really tap into your imagination, which is this place that's inside you that God has given us, and it's a field that's full of stuff, of dreams that you can make happen, but you imagine it into this sphere and rather than the reverse. That's what creatives do. And I mean, not just music and drama, but I'm talking about sports. And you ever see people do the most fascinating things? You wonder, how did they do that? They imagined it in. They imagined it to the outside, you know, versus the reverse of that. And it's something that they saw in them. They could see themselves inside and dream about it. I think the most creative people are just always dreaming all the time. They're just never here. And you tap them, then they come here. I was looking at something the other day, and someone sent something to me. It was Michael Jackson. He was with LaToya. It was a clip or something. And she was talking. She was calling for somebody. She said, "You got the most amazing." She said, "You got the most annoying voice. You sound like Carol Burnett." He was like, and then they were sending to me because sometimes the way he says things, my team says, you remind me of Michael. And when they sent me that, I was laughing. I said, but what y'all missed was he did that little rhythm tap. I said, he was in his head writing. He probably was already there the whole time. And he came out to say that and went back in. And I said, I never saw that. I said, I know that I identify because I used to do it all the time. Like I was just always somewhere doing something in my head, even though I was out here. And then they'll wake me up and I go, oh, yeah. So then I'm going back. And so I think that you imagine it in. That's what I believe about that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. As you were speaking, I'm like, stay with him because I'm dreaming now. You got to
Yeah.
Don't go too far.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Yeah. Own that about yourself. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
You own that about yourself, and you will bring into this realm things that we haven't seen yet. Only because it's your field, and you need to take whatever is growing in your field and bring it out here. Versus taking what's out here and going in there. That's not authentically yours, you know?
And thank you for that. That moment right there led to the question I was going to ask. You just encouraged us, and in your song, Encourage Yourself, mm-hmm. I'm certain that in all of these years of your career, you've had to encourage yourself. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to us a little bit about how do we encourage ourselves in our own journeys in ministry, the different areas we're going to go into, in hindsight, like what might you have said, or you would have loved someone to tell you during this stage of your career and education? How could you share an encouragement with us?
Well, I think you just have to believe beyond the point of believing. Like you just have to know, like, this is what I want to do. There's no other choice. I think sometimes when we give ourselves a B plan, then you don't really believe the A plan. I'm not saying the B plan is bad. I just say that I only have one plan. And I have to believe and imagine that plan so much that it comes to fruition. If we're going to believe all the things that we speak about in the scriptures, and we believe all of those things, because we ain't going to believe that, then okay. But if we're going to believe that, then we have to believe that what we speak can materialize about ourselves, especially if it's what we've been destined to do anyway, you know? And we'll know that. Now, you can start wanting to do something that you don't know you weren't destined to do that. We know what we were destined to do, you know? You can see something, say, I wish I could do that, but you know what works for you and what happens. So I believe that during those times when I had to encourage myself, it's a little bit different for somebody who grows up as an only child, because you're used to talking to yourself anyway. People who grow up with crowds, you need somebody to validate you. But us, we're by ourselves all the time anyway, so we always patting our own self on our back because it's just us anyway. So we go in there and see ourselves, then we come out and, you know, go, and, you know, people always think that, I always say that I'm an introvert and I'm extremely empathic. So people think the introverts are shy. We're not shy, we're just be in our role and we come out and speak to everybody, and then the energy of the room exhausts us, and then we go back in and we say, I'll see y'all later. We're not shy or even snubby, just like we just are comfortable where we are. So I think we're a little bit stronger with encouraging ourselves versus people who are around people all the time. I think once you learn to own your solo self, when you have a lot of solo time, you'll learn to understand your power, and you will be able to encourage your own self. Now, I'm not saying it hasn't gotten tough for me sometimes. I'm not saying that there's some times where I say, I ain't really want to do this no more because it was this happened, and it just seems like I'm always fighting for something. And I've been blessed, but, you know, when you dream big, you dream big. And so what I have now might be a great dream for somebody else. I was like, but my dream was this. So I just think that you get to a point to where you have to decide, either I'm doing this, I'm not, and that's got to take you past that point when you have your lows. I'm not, and I think lows are good for us. I think we can learn from everything, but I do think that over time you learn to just start believing your own words, and there's so much power in those words. So if you feel yourself getting low, sometimes just take a moment and be by yourself and just figure out how to center yourself and find that. Again, like, I'm glad I'm talking to really smart people. I tell people, like, you know what? Some days when I'm low, I will go to my television and I'll go to YouTube and I put on Sonics that's like 528 hertz. Yes. Because lower vibration is what you feel sometimes. And, you know, sometimes the times that you think you are low, it really is not you that's low. You've tapped into somebody else's vibration, and that's taking you down. And you thought, I'm low, I don't feel good today. But then you try to ask yourself, but why? And you can't come up with an answer why. It's because you pulled for somebody else's vibration. Now, the thing about, especially those math people, what you have to understand is higher vibration pulls lower vibrations up. Lower vibrations don't pull higher vibrations down. When you tap into that, you realize, I don't care where I am. If I'm high, if I'm not low, if I'm high, then I'm gonna switch the room. Understand? So sometimes just do that. Just figure out, what is it? If you really go deep, there are low vibrational foods and high vibrational foods. Eat those. You feel like all of a sudden you feel better. You don't know why, because you have to do that. So some of this is not just, it's speaking over myself, but doing all the other things with it too, so that I'm here. Because if you're low and trying to speak over yourself, it's not going to work because you're already low. You don't believe it anyway. So that kind of thing. Those are just some tidbits that I do sometimes. I'm just like, I don't feel good. Let me just listen to something that'll lift my vibration up a little bit. And I know that sometimes when we start talking like that in church, they think that's a little bit too scientific, but I normally can back them down, because I say, okay, if you think that talking hertz and talking energy is a little bit too scientific, then you obviously don't believe that God said, let there be light, because all light is vibration and energy. And not only did he say it, he spoke it, and it continued to come, and light turned into sound, and then turned into microwaves, and it turned into cell phones, because at the core of everything that we have now, what the common denominator is light. So when God spoke light in the beginning, that's what he spoke. And before that, it was, in the beginning was the word was, and so word is energy. That's because that's what was first. So words started creating, so that's energy. It takes energy to do. So our words have energy. And when you understand all that stuff, you realize that we are a vibrational creature. That's how God made us. And if you understand that, you'll start figuring out how to pull yourselves out of a rut. Is that cool? Yeah. Okay, cool. So
I have so many things that just came up while you were talking. 528, you just affirmed me because I just bought a tuning fork at 528. And it's the love vibration. It says it repairs your DNA.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And you said words and vibration. And so I want to get into storytelling, which is something that you spoke about all day yesterday. And when Sarah and I were preparing to come before you, we realized that even just this semester, there's been a theme of storytelling, like independent storytelling, encouraging folks. Dr. Otis Moss came to visit us, and 2 other persons did, and their theme was storytelling. Why is storytelling important?
Because that's a conversation. We learn from your stories. It's like going back to, also, 528 and 432 hertz. 432 hertz is a good frequency for you. It will chill you out. It will calm the brain. I did Goshen, the album. I did the whole album in 432 hertz. So it's that way. And the reason why I did it that way is because I knew that once people listened to it, they didn't realize it, but all of a sudden it would start working with the anxiety in the head. And that's what I wanted them to do. And when they finished it, they would make think like, I feel lighter now. Maybe it's the songs, but they don't really know that what I'm trying to do is get the brain to calm down so the anxiety is there. Now, back to this other storytelling. Storytelling is how we learn. It inspires us. It makes me dream. If you tell a story right, you paint a picture, you take me out of my present reality and go into the reality of your story. If I was to get, like I said, I grew up in a small Pentecostal church in North Carolina, and back then they had testimony service, and our testimony service was a story. But that story that they would tell there with them old mothers, they would take the church somewhere, and you'd be like, "What just happened here?" We've gotten away from that, but those testimonies, those stories, it gave us wisdom. It inspired us. It sometimes gave us ideas. We don't realize it, but sometimes, I say this all the time, revelation knowledge can't be taught, it's caught. Somebody could say one word and you blank out and you go like, oh, wait a minute, I have an idea. Because that word hit you and it knocked you into what I call the spirit, and you came back inspired. Because to be in spirit is to be inspired. Inspired comes from being in spirit. Somebody can say one thing and you go somewhere and then you kind of go like, you shake yourself and go like, oh, wow, I got a good idea. But that's because what they said took you in spirit and you returned inspired. Stories do that for us. So if we could focus on the story, that's where they get the wisdom. That's where they get inspired. That's where we kind of tend to shape them. And we also start placing a demand on the potential inside of everybody. Because your voice with the energy, with the power, with the faith, it can look at somebody and say, oh, I see this in you, and start talking. And that seed that's in there that's kind of just waiting for development, your voice will place a demand on it to start growing and show up. And then before you know, it's like, wow, you got all that from me and now you're doing this. That's what the stories do. Is that cool? Oh, thank you. Thank you.
I'll take a deep breath there.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm such a thinker, and a lot of times my concepts and methodology I keep in because I'm like, they'll think I'm so crazy, but I love talking with you guys because it's mine, and I know why you're here. So, we can talk. Yeah.
As a musician, I was trying not to go personal about this, but I believe that music is not just entertainment. And so when you're taking it into the level of intention, that you are tuning your music to 432, which is not 440, intentionally, because most of the music that we listen to is at 440. And so the intention behind putting it at 432 makes the music then prescriptive. Oh, yeah. And that's the way in which that I'm looking to compose music, specifically with the understanding that it is doing a spiritual purpose thank you for speaking that out and affirming me and confirming these thoughts that I have for myself.
Good. Do that. And everybody may not understand it. You don't even have to explain it to them. Just let it heal them. Yeah. And then when you get around people like this and you can talk about it, you'll be so excited to talk about it. Say, guess what I did? I did this like this. And I'll be like, oh, really? And then think about this. And so, yeah. But also to know this, before like around 1955 is when music changed. It wasn't always tuned at 440. It was tuned lower. So it was tuned towards 432. And there's a specific organization called the International, what's the name of it? It's called ISO, I forget the name of it. But anyway, they decided to change it. And there's a couple of conspiracy theories out there. There's one theory that where they said this particular company made an instrument and it was tuned at 440. And it was a powerful instrument they wanted. So they started changing tuning so it would fit this instrument because it's already made and they wanted everybody to do that. And they got with the right power and the right people and they changed pitch. There were a group of musicians in Europe that kind of petitioned against it because some people say that music tuned at 440 warps the violin, like it's not meant to be tuned at that. It starts doing things to it. The other thing that I always tell people, did you notice that after 1950 or so, by the time we got to the 60s, people stopped just listening to music like this. They started screaming and running to the stage, and that you start seeing people go, like that. So they always felt like 440 put anxiety on people, and it made people like, when they hear the rock and roll, people say, and start running like that. So those are just theories about tuning and what the change in tuning did to people versus the way music was prior to that. They enjoyed it, but they weren't fanatic. They didn't go fanatic on it. So those are just kind of conspiracy theories that are more alleged. I don't want to say. I do feel like there's some truth to it, but I'm going to say allegedly for right now, right? Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. And I'll ask one more question before we open it up to everyone. So as you were speaking about that inspiration and just doing your work and let it inspire others, I mean, there's so many songs of yours that I remember growing up in youth ministry and singing and imagining, but Matthew 28 has to be the one that, as I listen to, I am imagining dance choreography, I'm imagining actors, and I mean, just so much. It feels like it belongs, in a movie. It feels so much more than just a song that a choir is singing, and more than other songs. So I just would love for you to share with this particular example, the inspiration behind that. You mentioned you took drama courses, like just what were your inspirations and your sources to create Matthew 28? Because I feel like that piece in and of itself is a masterpiece.
I think that song is a masterpiece too, and unfortunately I didn't write it. One of my friends in Cincinnati, Ohio wrote it. Sean McMullen. I did my own adaptation to it with Tri-City, but Sean taught that song when I was in school, and I studied musical theater. I went to Cincinnati Conservatory of Music for musical theater. He was a jazz pianist there, and he did this song. I said, Sean, that is the most amazing song. You guys, I'm telling you, what you heard with that song, we did that song in 1983. It's that old. By the time Tri-City recorded it, it was like 25 plus years old. I put my own spin to it, but it was pretty much that. He's a really great guy. And because I'm theatrical, and again, the storytelling, I love doing that. But prior to this era, like maybe in the 80s and the 70s, choirs did these songs in the Black church that we called kind of anthems or gospel anthems. And there were songs that took on that same type of formula, not as unique as that. I love that one because it was so unique. But it would tell stories. There's one by Benny Cummins called Stand Still, where Isaac Douglas and Benny Cummins and the King's Temple Choir from out of New York told the story of the Exodus. And there's another one where It Is Well With My Soul, they do the hymn. There was the Southeast Inspirational Choir was one of those albums that I heard as a little kid. And I always thought they were so unique with the music. They had this song called The Greatest Commandment, and it's that unique thing. And I was supposed to put it on Tri-City's last album, Goshen. I had kind of wanted to redo it. So I might do it in the future. It was done by a guy, Herbert Picard, I think, out of Detroit, who's an old vintage musician. You know who I'm talking about. Like he inspired Thomas Whitfield and all them. He has this thing called The Greatest Commandment. The Southeast Inspirational Choir did it, but they were the youth choir. Those of you who don't know who the Southeast Inspirational Choir is, that's who introduced us to Yolanda Adams. But there were two versions of them. They were this like prodigy youth choir who did all these things with their voices as a choir. They did riffs as a choir. And then they stopped, and then they came back and they did a reunion, and that's when they introduced us to Yolanda with My Liberty. But they were grown then. When I first heard them, they were like kids. They were like 10 to 15, and they were doing all this stuff, and I was like, I can't believe these kids can sing like that, and listen to what they're doing in the choir. They're making, so that was some of my early influences of understanding how to do unique things with choir. And they had a song called The Great Commandment that I wanted to kind of put like a modern day spin on, but it really tells the story of the commandments in that kind of same kind of way, with the final word being the greatest commandment of them all is love. So it's that. So it's the storytelling again. It gets back to that. So yeah, I love doing Matthew 28. Everybody loves it. And Sean really thanked me for, kind of redoing it and doing my arrangement of it and adapting it for this time. But it was really old when we did it. It was really very old, yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Yeah.
So we're going to open it up to all of you. We want to allow a time of intimacy. I think we have about 15 minutes or so. So we are going to have a microphone that's going to go around, and I'm just going to try to make sure we notice everyone. I see Miles with a hand up, and then we'll pass it over here to Abby, and then just go on this side. We ask that everybody, please, we're going to do it like church, keep your testimony to 1 minute. And if not, I'm just going to go like this.
I got you. Now, what I will say, you can ask some of the staffing. I know that they're not ready for me a sound check yet, so we probably have a little bit more time than 15 minutes, unless he's messing with this schedule here. I'm just letting you know I'm not as rushed, but I'll leave it to you guys.
Those people that have to go to class, I want to be able to honor that.
That's fine. Yeah, that's why I want to make sure I'm not messing with that part of it. But don't let it be about me. I got to get out of here. That's what I'm saying. You're right. Cool.
Awesome. Well, my name is Miles. Miles Riley, first year M.Div student here at Divinity School. And my question, I guess, is just the story. Is there a particular song that you have in your catalog that you feel really shapes your story? And how did you arrive into telling that story within the realm or genre of gospel music?
I don't know if there's one particular song that tells my total story, because I think as we all live, we have chapters. So every song may be a chapter of my life. Maybe is there one song that sums it all up? I can't say that there is one, but there is one that probably moves me when I think about my journey. And it's a song, it's not a single, it's something that we do sometimes a lot in concert because of the story and the message in it. It's called Not Making Sense, Making Faith. It's a really unique concept, and this is the concept. Faith lives in a different sphere. You can't touch it, you can't taste it, you can't see it. It lives beyond natural senses, meaning that it's not sense knowledge. So to all of you here, when you get to a place and you have these dreams and everybody's looking to say, there's no way you can do that. You don't have the money. You don't have the resources. You don't have the access. You don't know all the right people. You haven't been to the right schools, all this stuff. It just doesn't, that idea just doesn't make sense. But what you have to tell them is, says, no, it doesn't make sense, but it makes faith. What makes faith doesn't make sense, and what makes sense doesn't make faith. For the rest of my life, I decided I'm not going to make sense, I'll make faith. That speaks for anybody going through journeys that people would have never thought you would have done, ending up on platforms that people would have never felt like, how did you get there? Well, faith got me here, And there's a lyric in it that says, don't know how I'm going to get there, but I walk by faith. Don't know how I'm going to live there, but the just shall live by faith. And when people ask how I'm going to do when I do what I've been put down here to do, this is what I'll tell them. For the rest of my life, I'm not making sense. I'm making faith. The difference between sense knowledge and faith, that.
I'll pass the mic over here.
Hi, my name is Abigail. I'm a second year MAR in philosophy of religion. And philosophy sort of like inspires the way that I think. And two of the songs that you've composed, I'm not sure if you've written them, but Prayer of Jabez and Beautiful Are the Feet.
Yes.
Those songs are very interesting to me because, I'm very interested in, the metaphysics of music, specifically tied to theology how a song can transcend time and still carry anointing. And it always like sparks the question in my mind, what is the person's spiritual practice that they can like impart that spiritual presence onto music? So I'm wondering about your spiritual practices, what you do when you create.
Okay, so that was good. You know, first of all, I call my song sometimes lyric spiritual psychology, so I understand metaphysics. So that's one thing where you're in the right zone. Interesting you said those two songs, because Bless Me Indeed, Andre Crouch had the front of that song and sent it to me and said, hey, I have this piece of a song. And he used to record everything on a recorder, and he sent me a cassette and say, here, listen to this and see if you can do something with it. And I was like, you want me to finish like one of your songs? Because Andre is my hero. He's one of the greatest songwriters ever in any genre, you know? So I was like, you want me to finish this song? I was like, oh, shoot. And he was like, no, I really think you can do it. So I said, send it to me, let me live with it. And I lived with it. And then I decided, oh, I'm going to record this on the choir. So I recorded it on the choir. We did a live session. And he never heard it. I sent it to him when it was sent to radio and was getting ready to play for the first time. He played, he said, I can't believe you did that to that thing. He said he had to pull over, he was crying. So one thing. The second thing is this, Andre Crouch talked to me one time I was working, and he said, hey, you know, people don't understand this journey of creatives. We have to leave our homes and leave our families, and sometimes we go do, now this is gonna cheer me up because he's not here too, but sometimes we have to leave our families and we go do this. And, you know, sometimes we do all this stuff behind the scenes and stuff, and we don't even get thanks sometimes. People don't even realize it. We don't get thanks, the sacrifices that we made. But what I have learned is that because we did this with our heart and we wanted to see people like we are here, he said, God is going to give us beautiful feet. And that inspired me to write the song. And I wrote it in a style like him. And I let him hear it. He just cried. I was like, just that conversation brought all of that to me. That's why I said beautiful are the feet of those who carry the gospel. They go where, they go without a compliment. Because he said sometimes we don't even get a compliment. But they still smile while hurting inside. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful are the feet. That's why. But when you write, it's not just my spirituality. What you felt is my authentic heart. Yeah. Authentic heart speaks to authentic hearts. Yeah. So it's not even a practice, because a practice becomes a practice. I don't practice my spirituality. Yeah. I am my spirituality. Yeah. I live it in organically every day. Yeah. So then therefore it's not something that, it's not a formula for me. So when I write stuff like that, I only write when I'm inspired, when I've been in spirit, and I come back with something, because that touches you differently. Now, if I just say, hey, they want to hear, let me go in the studio, let me try to write something, it may work, but that's not the same. Yeah. I try not to do that. I just say, hey, when people ask me for songs, I say, I may have something or I may not. Let me see what I hear. You know, tell me where you are. Let me see what comes back to me. So that's why you feel like that. Not so much my spiritual practice, but you got just part of my DNA, and it was authentic and it was organic.
The joke to that is, I was thinking, does that apply to writing papers too? Like,
well, I think if it's your story, well, now I don't know about from the teachers. Now you got to deal with that.
The teachers is wrong.
Now you got to do whatever your class lessons. You got to do what you got to do. But if you write your story from an organic place, yeah, okay, cool. So I don't know who's teacher, who's student, but I ain't gonna mess with your class lessons now. But if you write your story from an authentic place, the intention of that is that it teaches people and it moves them forward. I always say we become to help others become. And if we live by that, we'll realize that that is our call. We become, then the next become, then the next become. That is being fruitful and multiplying. Amen. You know? Cool. Yes, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Ryan Lindsay.
Hi.
Thank you for being here with us.
Thank you.
Number one, excellent monochrome look.
Oh, thank you. It's always comfortable and still chic. So it's an easy, you know the easy. It's like, oh, let me just do this. I'll still kind of look good, but it require a lot of work.
Distracted by the boots.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for being here. My question is, what is something that you've learned about God during a difficult season of your life? Especially if that season wasn't short.
I think that what I've learned about God is that He really knows our endings even before the beginning. So all the things that we're stressing about, He's just like, I really got you, but if you want to just go ahead on and worry yourself to death about that, a year later you'll come back and say, why was I so stressed out about that? I'm still here. The one thing that I know is God is going to always be God. He's never putting you on a path that He didn't know you was going to go on anyway. If we're going to believe that, I always say that. I always preface like, if you're going to believe what you study, then you got to believe that when He says, I knew you before you even came here. We had an agreement, obviously, for you to come here and do what you're going to do. So I got you covered. All you're doing is filling in the dots. I put the whole sketch there. You're just filling in something that I've already painted for you. So what I've learned about God is that He's always going to be God, and that He is the essence of my being. As I said the other day, that I've learned that I'm always calling Him because I'm always breathing. And His name is the sound of my breathing. So the more that I breathe, I'm always breathing as long as I'm alive, and He's always with me. So I think when it comes to understanding who God is and who He is with me is that He's got me covered. I'm like, the humanity of me may stress out sometimes about different things, but after it's all over, I wake up and go like, you wasted a lot of time. You could have been doing something. You could have had a VA, you know. You could have had a VA while you was working there because He had it covered the whole time. You know what I mean? You know, think about your stress times and you look like, here I am, I'm here and everything is still good. You understand? So it's that, but you know, that's our humanity pulling with our spiritual person. So that's what we go through here. We deal with humanity. Now, humanity is fragile, so it will worry about things. So, but God's got us. Cool.
We have time for about 2 more questions.
Yeah, because it's 5 after 1.
Yeah.
Until 1:15.
Okay, so we'll pass it over to Andre and then the Countess, and then depending on the time, we might have time for more.
Hello, my name is Andre Guilford.
Hello.
Second year, newly minted M.Div. I just transferred. Is that a public thing?
Yeah.
Public announcement. So I just transferred to the Master's Divinity program. So second year, from Detroit.
Awesome.
So I grew up listening to your music, and it has influenced me greatly. But one of the things I noticed about your music is that it is deeply theological, and that you're making some theological claims throughout your projects, throughout your repertoire, that is substantial. And I was thinking about, for instance, one of the sermons that I wrote was based upon the song Yahweh. Every breath you take is a breath of God. So I wanted to know, I would even make the claim that your projects are somewhat public theology, that you're actually taking folks to seminary that would never actually have access.
I hear that. A lot of preachers say, I love your music. It gives me something to preach.
No, it absolutely does. I'm a testament to that being a reality. Comparatively with Richard Smallwood and Walter Hawkins, who's really live into that theology and introduce that to the masses. So I want to know more about what are some of the influences to these theological claims that you're making, this public theology that you're doing. What are some of the things you draw on? I even heard in one of those songs, There Remains the Rest. From Pastor Creflo Dollar. So you want to know more about your influences, how do you draw the material to include in your music? Where does that come from, and how do you even craft that?
There's a line in a song that I haven't really fully written yet or even put out, and the line says, when they ask you how you know what you know, tell them heaven sends you a daily download. And there is no answer for that. There are some people who just know things, and they just know them. When it comes to my way of crafting songs, I usually get inspired by a title. And when I get the title, I'll write the song. Then I go back and study what the song is. Now, when I was younger, I would write things. And I was saying yesterday, I think I wrote beyond my age. So I didn't understand the revelation of it. I grew into it. I just would hear the song. I heard Michael Jackson say that songs exist and God decides who they come through. So if they just exist in another realm, I've just gotten songs that were older than me and I had to grow up into them. Now I'm there now. So usually when I write, I get the revelation pretty quick versus like 20 years ago. But I think that for me, I hear the title, then I go, this is really interesting. Let me figure out how I can teach everybody this lesson that I just learned in a way that they can get it. Pastors and people like you guys, theologians, they get it really quick. I try to find a way for everybody to do it. And it's very hard to take deep messages and simplify them and then make them singable. That's a craft, trust me, that's a craft in itself to take revelation and then make it playable for radio and make it similar for you to sing it. But at the same time, when you get into it, I can sit in here with people like you guys and go, oh, this is why, this is that, and then it's deeper. But I call it the simple deep. And I said that deep calleth deep. So I never let the industry take my deep away. It's just who I am. And I encourage people, don't let mediocrity take your deep away. If that's who you are, and if you're not, stay where you're at. But for me, how it came out of me, if you're not, stay where you're at. I'm good. Don't come to Yale if you still need to stay high school yet. You're gonna get beat down up here with all these smart minds. But if you're there, don't dumb down things to be popular. Bring the popular up to your level. When we think about God, we're not to bring God down to us. His thoughts are higher than ours. We're supposed to go up to him. He wants us to change the earth. We were created to recreate heaven on earth, and the only way you're going to do that is you bring the God things into the realm. And they exist in all of us. It's about us waking up to them and not being afraid to be different or to do something that is not the norm, So that's, for me, that's kind of how I do it. I will take a title, then I will think about that title. I may create a theme for myself, and then it starts speaking to me another kind of way. Usually the title dictates to me where it's a ballad or whether it's up-tempo. Just the title alone. It tells me that this needs to be up-tempo, or it tells me this needs to be a ballad. It tells me sometimes this needs to be in 4, this needs to be in 3/4, this needs to be in 6/8. That it speaks to me that way. But again, I told you a little here on the left. So, but I think there are other creators like that. And a person like me, if I say it, they'll go like, you know what? I am like that. Own it. Yeah. Don't be afraid of it, Yeah. Is that answered? I hope I did. Yeah. You sure?
Yeah.
Cool, yeah. Okay.
That's actually my sermon practice.
Oh, really? Good.
About the title first. And then
Awesome. Because the title gives you the story. Then now you got to just flesh out the chapters. And a song is still chapters inside a song, inside of 3.5, 4 minutes. But now we got to do it, or at least a wisdom. And then you give everybody everything about the wisdom that you want them to get out of, like a song like There Remaineth the Rest or Not Making Sense, Making Fade. I always said I want people to come and listen to my songs, and it's like they kind of sat down with a spiritual psychologist for a minute, then went back and said, oh, now I got it. Now you got that lyrical spiritual psychology happening, and that's so I'm very picky about lyrics. And inspiring wise, definitely great speakers speak to me as well. So Pastor Dollar, Pastor Bill Winston, who I call Dad, it's my church, the church that I go to, Dr. Bill Winston, he inspires me. He just, I wish you guys could hear me. He just lets it come out. Stuff just comes out. I was like, where in the world did you get that from? And he always says he really is always making me come and perform for his conferences. And I see him on the front row just writing notes. He said, when you sing in your songs, he said, I take notes. And I was like, you take notes from me? I listen to you all the time, and I take notes from you. So we kind of work back and forth. I'm always telling him, your voice is tuned to the frequency of faith. And if I hear you speak for like 1 minute, I go out and feel like I can take over the world. And you guys will have that in your voice. Own your faith so that when you speak, when people leave, they leave changed. And I'm not talking religion change. I'm talking about a whole mindset like, oh, I got ideas now. Oh, I just feel like when people come to church, they should leave transformed all kinds of ways, you know, not just the church transformed that we know, but I want to go do a business. Oh, I want to go back to school. I want to get this. I see my path now. I think that that's what you want people to do when they leave from your presence.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Countess Cooper and STM student. So your music, it just, it ditto to what Andre said, deeply theological.
And also Richard, Walter, Edwin, Andre, they're all were my mentors, my heroes. They're my brothers. I'm blessed to have been able to spend time with Edwin a lot, with Walter a lot, with Andre a lot. Richard and I, that's my brother, that's my friend. So thank you for that, because anytime people say I remind them of them, that's the biggest compliment I could ever have. So thank you for that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, so I find that your music is deeply theological. There's some songs that I didn't hear on the radio, but I heard, they came up, like, I don't know if it's Pandora or something like that, and like to say, sometimes I'm exercising. One day I was exercising, I was running through the gate at Woodmore, and the song came on, rewritten.
Oh.
What, and you mentioned Ocean, the album, and you wrote it at 432?
Yeah, 432 hertz. That the album is tuned to 432 hertz. So if you tried to play it and you just go like, wait a minute, I can't find what key the song's in, it's because 432 is in between the keys. So a C there, you wouldn't be able to find the keys of the record. You have to kind of guess what key is the song is, because it's going to be in between the keys.
So, yeah, no, but that in between, so you say what was meant to hurt you helped you. What was meant to shake you accomplished you. You know, what was meant to wake you, God used it to make you. You've been rewritten by the King. I mean, I heard.
I love that song.
Yeah, I had to fall in the street. I was like, you know.
I built it around the story of Joseph. Built it around the story of Joseph. And all that he went through, and he ended up the king, you know? So I wanted to tell people, no, we can't control the things that happen to us in life, but we can control how we respond to them. And when they come, and if we think, you know what, this is coming to help me, and this is coming to make me, and at the end of it, I'm going to be rewritten, but I'm going to be rewritten by the king. The last phrase of this says this, I mean, I give you the story, I give you the wisdom that she talks about, and I remind you, it's just to talk to you, to tell you that everything that's happened to you, think about it. You're still here, you're strong, you look good. It didn't break you, it made you. There's a place in it later on that says this, and this is a really powerful final thought. It says, it goes from second person, because I love talking to people through songs. That's why we notice a lot of my songs are speaking second person, because I don't like to always be a monologue about me. It could be from my mind to yours, or from how I see it, but I want to talk to you. That way I feel like I'm teaching you. But there are places where I may switch to first person, but I'm first person you. So after that verse, it says, I'm available for change. Yeah. My life rearranged. God, you can write my story again. So I think after we get through that, everybody just needs to stand in God's presence and say, you know what, God, I'm open. I'm available for change. My life, go on and do whatever you need to do with it. You can rewrite my story. I'm not going to fight. If I'm going somewhere if I'm going down another path that I didn't expect, I'm available for change. I'm a canvas, write me however you want to write my script. And I think when we get there, we end up where we're supposed to be. So that's what that song is.
So thank you for that. I wish more people could hear a lot of these songs. Like, that just happened to come up. And I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. Do people know that? And like, beautiful are the feet. I happen to hear that. So, but they're not always in the rotation on the radio.
Oh no, they're not always radio songs. And when I started, some of us would get, and everyone wasn't blessed like that, but I was blessed to get 3 and 4 and 5 songs as singles. But now people do like one song and then go on. But also people write differently. They just write kind of one chorus to get it on and out. I'm just never going to be that writer. I don't think like that. And it's an insult for God for me to bring my brain down to that, so I'm never going to do that. So I'm going to give you the song that I think will go to radio, but even that's going to have some depth to it, because I was like, deep, call it deep. And that's it.
And the last thing, this is my Exodus. So I was preparing for a sermon, and I had to think a long time. And then that song came. I said, oh, this is a perfect song for the people to sing at the place where it was, military setting. And I'm just wondering what scripture may have inspired that.
Well, it's the story of the Exodus. But what I did was I took the story and put some contemporary wisdom to it. We think about deliverance, and if you come from Pentecostal church that I come from, when they think deliverance, you think about it a certain kind of way. Those of you who understand Pentecostal church, when we say deliver, they don't go here, they don't go there, they don't do this no more, they don't do that, whatever. But when we got ready to do that song, I wanted to spin it in a way to where it was psychological. So I said, rather than saying, thinking about God deliver me from this and that, and that, deliver me from myself. It seemed like I'm always the one letting the wrong people in my life. I'm always the one. Stop blaming people. Own up to your own problem. And then when you get there, decree that I'm not going back. I'm not letting them in anymore. I'm not mismanaging my finances anymore. I'm not going to not study my homework and get a F on my exam anymore. I'm not doing it anymore. This is it. This is my release. This is that, and that gave me the final thing. This is my Exodus. I'm out of here. I ain't going down this path anymore. So that's that. Again, the story is really based on the children of Israel, but I just took that and added some conventional wisdom to it. And I think that if we learn how to take those texts and do that, you will reach people who don't go to church. Yeah. And I think we're supposed to do that. You're not denouncing God or even taking him out of it. What you do is just find a way to talk to them at their level, give them scenarios that remind them of themselves. I could have talked about, sin this, sin that. But in the real world, when you talk about people who are mental health issues, you need to get people to understand that I have been the root of my own problem. Let me own up to that so I can get some help, and then I can move forward, and then I can come back and help someone else. So that's what deliver me is. Deliver me from me. God, come and rescue me from me. Yeah. So that's that. Yeah.
Nedelka's going to close us out, and Reverend Jennings, go ahead.
Thank you so much.
I enjoy being here with you guys. You guys are so intelligent, and I was telling Mark, who else can talk like this? Too much, because I'm like, it'll go over a lot of people said. So I enjoyed it. I really did. Thank you.
You are a musician's musician. You are a teacher's teacher. You're the person behind a lot of songs that we don't even realize. Thank you for speaking to us and making connections that I think are so important between the work that we do here. Many believe that this is a privileged space. It is, but making it clear that we also need to reach out. That's the Great Commission.
Oh yeah, you're here to take what you've learned here and be impactful out there. Yes. This is your study time. Now go and what I say, be fruitful and multiply. Yes. By the time you leave here, you should be setting some other people to come up and do what you did. That's how we keep it going. If we don't do that, it's going to stop something. So figure out, like your great minds, figure out how to take all of these things that you've heard me say in this methodology and put it in books. Because people can't find some of this stuff anywhere. Right. That's where the scholars are. That's y'all's duty to the scholars to find ways to put all of this stuff somewhere so people can come and learn from it. So yeah.
Thank you. Nothing more to say.
Thank you again,
right. Thank you guys.
Mr. Lawrence. We appreciate your coming.
You.
And thank you for giving us the word of the Lord today. Because you have challenged us to be willing to allow God to rewrite our lives.
Yes.
And we hear that as the word of the Lord to us.
Thank you.
We have a small gift for you.
Okay.
Just to say thank you.